January 1400. Sonning Manor, Berkshire. A bishop's residence turned prison for a child who is still, technically, a queen. Armed men move through the courtyard in the grey light before dawn. They are not attacking, they are stripping badges, small metal emblems of a chained white heart, off the coats of the servants guarding a 9-year-old girl. The badge belongs to Henry IV, the man who seized the English throne 4 months earlier. The men tearing it off believe the king he deposed, Richard II, is still alive somewhere, and that this child is the key to bringing him back. She does not lead this uprising. She barely understands it, but her existence alone is dangerous enough that armed rebels have ridden through the night to reach her, and the new King of England will spend the next 18 months treating her like a weapon that might go off in his hands. Her name is Isabella of Valois. She was crowned Queen of England at the age of 7. She was married at 6, and by the time this scene at Sonning takes place, she has already survived being handed across a battlefield like a treaty document, because that is exactly what she was. The question this story exists to answer is simple, and it should not have a simple answer. How did a 6-year-old girl become the human guarantee of peace between two kingdoms? And why, when that peace collapsed, did the country holding her refuse to let her go home? If you're drawn to the darker corners of history, subscribe to Grimmer History. We're on our way to 45,000 subscribers. To understand why a child could be traded like currency, you have to understand what royal daughters were actually for. England and France had been tearing each other apart for decades in the conflict historians would later call the 100 Years' War. By the 1390s, both sides were exhausted. Richard II, 29 years old, recently widowed, and desperate for a settlement that would let him rule without constant war on the continent, needed peace with France more than he needed almost anything else. His first wife, Anne of Bohemia, had died in 1394 without giving him an heir. That left a vacancy, and in the political arithmetic of medieval Europe, a royal marriage was never just a marriage, it was a contract, a down payment on peace, a way to turn a family bond into a treaty that both sides had a personal stake in keeping. France had a daughter available, Isabella, born in the Louvre in November of 1389, daughter of King Charles VI of France. Charles's government wanted the same thing Richard wanted, an end to the bleeding, and they had a product to offer. She was 6 years old. Her mother, Isabella of Bavaria, had spent years navigating the same dynastic machinery that was now being turned on her daughter. Charles VI's own capacity to govern came and went. He suffered recurring episodes of mental illness that left rival factions at the French court fighting to steer policy in his name. In a kingdom already unstable at the top, a daughter's marriage was one of the few assets the crown could still reliably move. Her age was not a secret, and it was not treated as an obstacle. It was, if anything, part of the appeal. A child bride meant decades of future loyalty being purchased in advance. Isabella had already been promised once before, at the age of 2, to the heir of a French noble house, a contract that quietly dissolved. Royal daughters were engaged and re-engaged the way land was bought and sold. What mattered was not what Isabella wanted. She was not yet old enough to be asked, and even if she had been, her answer would not have mattered. By July of 1395, Richard authorized formal negotiations. Within 8 months, a marriage contract was signed in Paris. Isabella's life had been arranged before she was capable of understanding what a husband was. There was one legal boundary even this system respected. Canon law required a girl to reach the age of 12 before a marriage could be completed in any meaningful sense. Isabella would be crowned, housed, and titled as England's queen, and remain, in every practical sense, a child with a governess and a nursery, waiting out a 6-year sentence before her marriage would even legally exist. That gap, between the crown on her head and the childhood she was still living, is where this story happens. Aristocratic child betrothals were not, in themselves, unusual for the period. Noble families negotiated engagements for toddlers as a matter of routine business. But Isabella's case provoked open criticism even at the time. Her age, the foreign household she would require, and the enormous sum attached to her were all noted as extraordinary, even by the standards of a world that already treated royal daughters as instruments of state. On the 9th of March, 1396, the paperwork was finalized in Paris, a marriage contract, and alongside it, a 28-year truce between England and France. The two documents were legally separate. In practice, everyone understood they were the same transaction. Isabella was the seal on the treaty. If the marriage broke, so, symbolically, did the peace. Her dowry was set at 800,000 gold francs, a staggering sum, paid partly up front and partly in installments over years. In exchange, she was required to formally renounce any claim to the French crown. She was 6 years old, signing away rights to a kingdom she would never rule, in a ceremony designed by adults for adults. Then came the handover. At the end of October 1396, Richard and Charles met near Ardres, on the border between English and French territory. Royal tents rose on both sides of that border for the occasion, and the meeting between the two kings was staged as a display of wealth so extravagant that gold vessels, jeweled collars, and devotional images were exchanged as gifts between men who had spent a generation trying to kill each other's soldiers. Isabella was carried into that meeting in a ceremonial litter, and at some point during the pageantry, she was physically transferred from the French camp to the English one. A 6-year-old girl walked or carried across an invisible line from the only family and language she had ever known into the custody of a foreign king 23 years older than her. Her belongings tell their own quiet story about who she still was underneath the title. Her trousseau included crowns, chaplets, and gold and silver vessels befitting a queen, but also dolls, fitted with their own miniature silver furnishings. A child was being outfitted in the same shipment for both a coronation and a nursery. Within days, in early November, she was married to Richard at St. Nicholas's Church in Calais. Contemporary chroniclers disagree on the exact date. Some say the 1st of November, others the 4th, but there is no disagreement about the substance of the event. The marriage did not create a household. It created a queen with a separate nursery, foreign attendants slowly replacing French ones, and a husband she would see only occasionally, on ceremonial terms. By late November, she made her formal entry into London, and in early January of 1397, she was crowned at Westminster Abbey. The exact date is disputed between the 5th and the 8th, but the fact is not. A child not yet old enough to read a treaty was now, officially, Queen of England. For 3 years, that was the entire architecture of Isabella's life. A title, a household staffed by people chosen for her, not by her. A husband who, by the more reliable accounts, treated her with something like paternal kindness, gave her gifts, and visited her rather than the marriage itself. Stories of toys and affectionate visits survive, though less securely documented than the treaty records and inventories that dominate the archive. What is certain is that her value was never really about her. It was about what she guaranteed. And guarantees, as Isabella was about to learn, only hold as long as the man who made them stays in power. May 1399. Richard prepares to sail for Ireland to put down a rebellion. Before he leaves, he and Isabella meet one final time at Windsor, during festivities held in her honor. They will never see each other again. What happens next unfolds with the mechanical coldness of a system protecting itself, not a family in crisis. Isabella's French governess is dismissed. Most of her French attendants are removed. She is left mostly among English staff, with only a single French lady and her confessor remaining. The last threads connecting a 9-year-old to the country she came from, deliberately cut. While Richard is away, his cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, the future Henry IV, returns from exile and begins seizing the kingdom. Royal officials, unsure what is coming, move Isabella between residences and eventually place her at Sonning, a manor belonging to the Bishop of Salisbury. She reportedly attempts to send a letter to her father. It does not arrive. Richard, hearing what is happening, asks to see her. He is refused. By the end of September, Richard is deposed. Isabella, 9 years old, a crowned queen with no husband on the throne anymore, is now something else entirely: leverage. France demands her immediate return, along with the dowry money already paid. Henry's government stalls. He does not have the funds to repay what was owed. He also does not want to hand back a symbol that could be used against him, and he has begun quietly exploring whether Isabella could instead be married to his own son and heir, Henry of Monmouth, the future Henry V. Later stories claim the 10-year-old queen personally and defiantly rejected this proposal out of loyalty to Richard. The stronger, better documented version is less romantic. It was the French court that refused the match, not necessarily Isabella herself, whose private response was never reliably recorded by anyone. Then, in January of 1400, the rebellion arrives at her door. Supporters of the deposed Richard, men who believe, or want to believe, that he is still alive, reach Sonning and tear Henry's badges from her servants' coats. They do not abduct her. They do not need to. Simply reaching her is the message. This child is still a rallying point, whether she wants to be or not. Her guard tightens immediately. She is moved to Havering, watched more closely than before. Weeks later, Richard dies in captivity, the manner of his death disputed to this day, starvation and violence both proposed, certainty available to no one. Isabella is not told. The 9-year-old widow of a king is kept in the dark about his death, in a residence chosen for her, guarded by men loyal to the family that deposed him. Think about what her daily world looked like in these months. Guarded doors between rooms, warmed by the same hearths. French and English spoken in separate clusters among the servants around her, a household literally divided by the politics happening over her head. Mounted messengers carrying sealed letters between residences and ports, none of them addressed to her, all of them about her. Every object in her world, the badges, the seals, the inventories, existed to track her value. Almost nothing in the record exists to track how she felt living inside it. The surviving records from this period are meticulous about money, property, and negotiations. They are almost entirely silent about what Isabella felt. We know where she slept. We do not know if anyone told her why. It took French diplomatic pressure and the implicit threat of renewed war to finally move Henry. In May of 1401, a treaty secured Isabella's release. The agreement bound her to stay out of English political intrigue going forward, as if a child held for 18 months as collateral might herself be the security risk. She sailed back to France that summer, 11 years old, having been a French princess, an English queen, and a deposed king's widow before she had even reached the age canon law considered old enough for marriage. The dowry installments England had already received were not repaid. Valuable gifts stayed in Lancastrian hands. Henry kept the money. France got the girl back, minus a significant chunk of what she was worth on paper. Everyone in this arrangement calculated a profit. Charles VI's government got back a daughter and could claim moral high ground in the eyes of Europe. Henry IV got 18 extra months without a French-backed rival narrative circling his throne, and he kept a fortune he was never going to willingly return. Nobody calculated what those 18 months cost the girl at the center of it, because in this system, that number was never on the ledger. Isabella did not get a childhood after this. In 1406, at 15, she was married again, this time to her 11-year-old cousin, Charles of Orleans. Another arranged match, another political calculation dressed as a wedding. 3 years later, she died shortly after giving birth to their daughter. She was 19. She had spent her entire short life as an instrument, first of peace, then of leverage, then of a second dynasty's ambitions. She was never, at any documented point, the author of her own story. There is a strange coda to the whole affair. The English proposal Isabella's family had rejected, marriage to the young Henry of Monmouth, eventually happened anyway, just to a different daughter. Years later, having conquered much of France by force, that same Henry, now Henry V, married Isabella's younger sister Catherine instead. The Lancastrian dynasty got its Valois bride in the end. It simply took a war to get it, rather than a negotiation. The first distortion came fast, and it came from people with their own agendas. Writers sympathetic to the fallen Richard, figures like Jean Creton, and the anonymous chronicler behind an account hostile to the new Lancastrian regime, wrote about Isabella as a symbol of Richard's tragedy and the injustice of his fall. English chroniclers writing from inside Henry's regime told a different story, shaped by different loyalties. In neither version was the child herself the point. She was evidence in an argument between men. The second, more famous distortion came 2 centuries later from Shakespeare. His play, Richard II, gives the king a queen capable of a devastating, emotionally mature farewell, a grown woman grieving her husband's downfall in eloquent verse. It is one of the most quoted marital farewells in English drama. It never happened, not like that. The real Isabella was 9 years old during the deposition. There was no roadside goodbye scene between a loving adult couple. There was a child, moved between guarded residences, cut off from her own household, kept in the dark about her husband's death. Shakespeare didn't lie about the broad facts of the reign, but he aged his queen up by roughly 2 decades to make the scene work, and in doing so, buried the actual 9-year-old under a more comfortable, more romantic adult tragedy. Modern retellings have their own version of the same instinct. Popular accounts often describe Richard as a doting father figure, and Isabella as a loyal child bride who personally refused the Lancastrian remarriage out of devotion to him. It's a warmer story. It may even contain a kernel of truth about Richard's kindness. But it quietly does the same work Shakespeare's play did 200 years earlier. It turns a diplomatic transaction involving a 6-year-old into a tender human interest story, and in doing so, it softens the machine that made the whole arrangement possible in the first place. The truth is less comforting than either version. Isabella of Valois left behind almost no words of her own. What survives is inventories, treaties, and negotiations, the paperwork of the men who moved her. So, how did a 6-year-old girl become the guarantee of peace between 2 kingdoms, and why did the man who seized that peace's throne refuse to let her go? Because she was never actually a person to the system that used her. She was a signature made flesh, proof that 2 kings meant what they said, until one of those kings no longer held power, at which point she became something else, unpaid collateral, too valuable to release, and too dangerous to keep visible. Nobody in this story set out to be cruel to a child. Charles VI wanted peace. Richard wanted stability. Henry IV wanted to survive his own coup. Each decision made sense from where the men who made it were standing. That is what makes it worse, not better. A horror that requires no villain, only a system where a girl's value was always measured in gold francs and treaty clauses, and never once in years lived. The palace remembered the coronation. The treasury remembered the dowry. But at Sonning, in the dark, a 9-year-old queen learned that a crown does not protect you from the people who put it on your head. It only tells them exactly how much you're worth to keep.